Hey, what's up, everybody? This is C3 Films here with an open discussion. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about Crazy Rich Asians. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, go and watch it. It's a great movie. Then come back and watch our conversation about it. And also,
Happy
Happy
New
New Year.
Year! Happy Chinese New
So,
Year for those who are confused culturally.
yes, thank you. We got to educate them out there. So, we're gonna go ahead and let's just go ahead and get right into it. I hadn't seen this movie before. This is my first time watching the film. Cheryl, you have seen it before, so this is I don't even know if this is your second or third time watching it, but like let's talk about it a little bit. What did you like about the movie?
um, Surprisingly, when I watched it the first time, I was all excited about it, and I guess you could say back in the day I would have put it on our other show. It wasn't that good because I was thoroughly
Ooh,
upset.
you were
Upset.
upset with the movie.
I was upset because I was like, okay, here we go. We're gonna have an all Asian cast movie finally, first time in 25 years since Joy Luck Club, and I
Hmm.
expected more, more, because it was great to see an all Asian cast about Asian characters and Asian regular people, but I mean they weren't
Hmm.
really regular. They were like two
They're
regular
rich.
people, and
Constance Wu is a regular person. She's like
but
her
was
and her
she?
mom are like,
Was she
was
though?
she?
Because she was like how many people are that young and are
Oh,
a,
that
a
established.
professor at NYU?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's
So
fair.
that's a little bit of a stretch there too. But also like the story wasn't really original because it was basically just a Cinderella story. Like
Hmm.
they just threw I mean, I guess it was I wouldn't say like they just threw like Chinese people in or Asian people in and made another Cinderella story, which they kind of did, but it was based off of a book, so I have
Yes.
to give it that that they were doing it because this book was already growing in popularity. So
Right.
that was a that kind of choice, I guess. But I just wanted more from it. I wanted a more original story so that
Yeah.
we could be better represented, and the fact that like they're all rich also doesn't really quite represent us either. So it was nice to see the faces of people who look like me, but it wasn't in the context that I was hoping for.
Yeah, and I can understand that. One of the things when I was watching the film is that I thought that it was interesting that they were going to be touching on like the kind of like the differences in class. Like Constance Wu was supposed to be our entry into like here's a people that didn't have it all, that are just like regular run of the mill everyday people, and then you have these people that are larger than life and don't live the way any of us actually live. And I thought that it was going to bring in kind of more of that kind of class structure and class dynamic, kind of like Parasite, if you've seen that. Like, and that's one of the things that they mess around with in that movie is like this idea, like the differences in class and what that actually means and what that represents. So I will say when they made it a point to talk about her not being like wealthy, and even him talking about how he was trying to hide his wealth, I thought that that was going to come more into play, and it does come into play in the movie, but maybe not as much as it could have in order to feel more representative of people that actually come from that background.
I mean, ultimately, it did kind of fall into a more familiar category, I guess, in the sense of tradition and just being traditional with the family. A
Hmm.
lot of those elements are pretty true and they are pretty common. It's just the wealth part of it that is unfamiliar. So it's like seeing ourselves in an extravagant setting. But
Right.
everything else in terms of like family ties, respect, tradition, the culture, it's all there.
Yeah, and actually that brings me like to one of the questions I want to ask you is because like as someone that was watching this, like on the outside looking in, that's familiar with some aspects of the culture, but is not of that culture himself. Some of the things that I found like interesting as far as like topics to cover were like the idea of the Americanized Asian person versus the person that actually, grew up in Singapore, grew up in like places in China, because that's some of the things like on the flip side, Americanized, brown people are not seen the same as, brown people in Africa are viewed as two different types of people. And so what does that how did that element of the story play across to you? Because that I could see how that could be another thing that could come out in the story where someone that is Americanized that then goes to China is not actually viewed as a real Chinese person.
Yeah, that's a legit thing. I actually think Constance Wu's character fit into the fitting in more than how I would feel. Like if I went to China or to Singapore, my family's from Singapore, by the way, so there's a little bit more
Mhm.
familiarity there for me. But me going to either of those places, I'd just be like fish out of water, totally American. I'm as good as white. Or anything else that is not Chinese. So, or worse, actually, I'm as good as white. There. I don't know anything. I don't know what anyone's saying. I don't know what the food is called. Not all of them. Some of them.
Hmm.
My language is not very strong. It's actually cripplingly elementary.
Elementary. Yeah.
I could
This
maybe talk
this
to a
language ain't
five
working
year
too well for
old.
you.
5-year-olds talk better than me. But yeah, so there are people who were born and raised in America who can speak more Chinese. I just so happen to not because I would say that I'm like Gen 1.5 because my mom was Gen 1, but she came here when she was very young. And
Hmm.
because they teach you English in Singapore. So I
Hmm.
learned significantly less English growing up here than your average first gen person in America. So,
Okay.
yeah. So this we could go into that more, but let's talk about the movie.
Yeah, no, like that is interesting, but yes, like but talking more about like how like Constance Wu's character is like portrayed in this fish out of water story, because that's what it is. She is a fish out of water. She is in this place where she is not as wealthy as everybody else, not as like Chinese as everybody else, and even the fact that she comes from America, there are certain stereotypes associated with Americans that aren't seen as valuable here, like being an American means that you prioritize your dreams over family, as far as like the mother feels, Michelle, um, her character, like how does and she how she had to prioritize basically supporting the family over herself, and that kind of relationship between the two of them, that and how the mother actually kind of looks down on her because of the fact that that's what she doesn't even have a conversation about that. She just assumes that's what the value that Constance Wu's character's values are.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that might not be an American thing exactly, as opposed to a older generation versus newer generation kind of thing. Because they like
Hmm.
to hang on to traditions as opposed to the younger generation being like, why do we need to follow tradition? So, although there are some traditions that some people like to keep, so like Chinese New
Right.
Year and wearing
Right.
red. Red is a lucky color, like they say in the movie.
Right. No, yeah, I actually thought that was really interesting when she's trying to pick out a dress, and they say, and her mother says to her the same thing that you said to me, where it's
Before
like,
you
no,
watch
you
the
do.
movie.
Before I watched the movie, by the way, it's just like, don't wear white. That's not good. You're not going to a funeral. Wear red
Exactly.
because it's lucky and it's like for and fertility and all this other stuff. So I was like, oh, all right, look at that.
That's right. Chris was gonna wear a white shirt today, and I was like, no, 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 no. You need to wear red for Chinese New Year.
And see, these are the things. Always growing, always learning. Um, but yeah, but like as far as when she actually gets there, like it's crazy. It's really extravagant. The Her finding out more about her boyfriend, the fact that he speaks he speaks I think he speaks Mandarin and Cantonese, and he speaks Malay um as well, and he speaks English. And when you hear him speak Malay, like it feels like she's hearing this for the first time. She's looking at him like, okay. And so this entire journey is her finding out more about her boyfriend that he had kept hidden from her this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk like I'm not an expert on Singapore, but because that is where most of my family came from, I feel like watching it, I have a better understanding of the culture because it's very
Hmm.
different from China. So, like I mentioned, they teach you English in Singapore, but because it's kind of like San Francisco almost, where there's people coming from all over the place, so there's many languages that are spoken there, and you kind of have to learn all of them in school. I think they like lessoned it before, but my grandma, who, she was born there in 1926, knew 7 different languages.
Oh man.
Yep.
I know the one, and I know the one barely.
I know the one barely, and a little bit of another one that is pretty shameful.
Oh man. But yeah, and so thinking about like the Cinderella story and everything, she doesn't have like the what evil cousins. I mean, she basically has like the evil step or evil godmother in the form of the person that will eventually become her mother-in-law. The also the other women that she goes with, like Gemma Chan's character Astrid is like the nicest woman in the movie to her, besides her other friend played by Aquafina. But like all the other women that she goes like on their retreat with, they get put the bloody fish on her bed, they call her terrible names, and they treat her horribly because they feel like she's just trying to steal this man away and everything else like that. And she's just looking like, I just want to come here and have a good time for somebody else's wedding. It's not even my friend's wedding. It's like this the guy I'm seeing is his friend's wedding.
Right.
That's the only reason I'm here.
I do feel a little bit like she does have a stronger character than the, typical Cinderella because she kind
Hmm.
of stands on her own the entire film. And I noticed that like there aren't a lot of scenes where Nick is there to support her. And
Yeah.
she's just kind of like on her own a lot of the time. Like they barely have time together. And
Hmm.
and it kind of makes her stronger as a woman and as a character, I guess you could say. But I appreciated that part of it.
Yeah, I liked her as a character, especially because she is somebody that falls and that does fail. She is somebody that kind of wants to give up. And it's only after getting a pep talk from her friend that she's like, no, you got to stay in there. You got to fight. They're trying to play chicken with you. And I was wondering where her skill in the poker scene at the beginning of the movie was going to come back into play. And I I have mixed feelings on how it was utilized by the end of the movie, but I do like the fact that she was able to take the mother out of her element and put her in a scenario that the main character felt more comfortable with. And so, therefore, she was able to have this conversation where she comes across as strong, where she says, hey, look, I am not going to marry your son, and in the future, when he is with somebody else and you are with your grandkids, you're gonna know it was because of me. And then boom, I don't play mahjong. I wish I played mahjong and knew how to play mahjong, but based on the music, I assumed something really cool happened and that she won, and then she walks out like a boss, and I'm like, yeah. And then when the mother gets up and the mother turns and the mother looks at the other mother, like, that's right, I see you. Don't mess with my daughter. Boom. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's mom's. Mom's got your back. I love it. I loved it. It's like my favorite scene in the movie.
I think from what, yeah, it was a really good scene. I love that that's what she had to say. That basically, I'm not gonna make the person that I love choose between me and you. You're the one doing that, not me. So I want you to remember that
Hmm.
you're the one that was making this choice. And so
Right?
to go back to the whole mahjong thing, I don't remember exactly how to play, but from what I remember looking at the tiles, she could have won, but she tossed that tile.
Oh,
And so
she chose to lose.
she chose to lose. She gave the winning tile to the mother, and you can kind of guess what people need based on what they're taking out of the discard. So she probably knew that Nick's mom needed that piece that she also had, that she could just win right there, but then tossed it because she's basically saying, "You win. This is your choice. I'm giving you what you want by leaving, but just so you know, like I actually could have won. I could have taken everything from you, but I decided to give it to you instead."
I like that scene a lot
Yeah.
more now.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like, yeah, and that's one of those things that unfortunately was lost to me because I don't know how to play mahjong and I've never played in my life. But that's really cool because it mirrors exactly what she's doing. She is choosing to lose. Um, but yes, like I can't say it any better than you just did. Like that's perfect. Um, and the other part of the movie that I really liked was how it recontextualized certain information that we got. Because when you watch these romantic comedy films, there's always a moment when the shoe's gonna drop and everything's gonna be bad, and people have to then people like leave each other, and then there's going to be the scene where they're chasing, running along the runway, or running to the bus terminal, or in this case, running to the airplane, and they get back together and it's happily ever after. You expect those things, but I like the fact that the thing that came to kind of pull them apart wasn't like some secret that he had or some secret that she was hiding, but it was a secret that she didn't know anything about. And that made that scene like sting more to me because the mother comes in and it's like, here's this information. Your dad's actually alive. You're not who you say you are. Your mom like cheated on her husband with another man. So you're a baby out of wedlock. And and she's saying it like, oh, you knew all this, but you can see it on her face that she didn't know any of it. Not only is it like stinging because you're trying to use this information to hurt me, but the information's actually hurting me because I'm hearing it for the first time.
It's like a
And I was
double
like,
blow.
that, yeah. And I thought that that was a very effective way of doing that, that felt at least like different enough that it didn't feel like the same thing that's usually done with these romantic comedy scenes. And then it's reframed when the mother comes and you hear the mother's full story about how the husband was abusing her and she had to run away to China to escape him and she fell in love with the person that helped her. And it's like, wow. So just because something looks a certain way and you think you have the whole story just from like taking a first glance, you don't notice the full story until a little bit later, and it makes it all of a sudden not seem as bad.
Mhm. And I really gotta say I loved Michelle Yeoh's character so much. She was so good in this movie.
Michelle Yeoh's
There's
amazing.
so many things that I love about her, not just like how powerful she is, but also how gentle she can be, and there was just so many layers to this character. But I think one of the things that stood out to me the most was when Rachel is kind of she got lost and she's like looking for the bathroom or something, and like the
Hmm.
walls are all green, and it was like right after the dumpling scene,
Hmm.
when we got to see her the mother's ring, and it's like this big emerald green diamond. It's so pretty and it's so big. And then you go to this next scene where all the walls are green and Michelle Yeoh is wearing this same green shirt and everything, and she goes up the stairs, and so they're both on the landing,
Mhm.
and then somehow Michelle Yeoh's character goes on the other side of the wall facing side of Rachel, and then kind of takes a step forward, and then Rachel has to take a step down, and it's like this
Yeah, I saw
big
that.
power move, and like that was so great. Like I didn't notice it the first time, but the second time I was like, wow, that is cool. It's so unnatural, but it worked, and it worked really well. And just that
Yeah,
color showcasing, like just all got brought back together on the plane when Nick proposes to Rachel, and everything is just said from showing the ring. Like there has to
yes.
be no explanation because we already know everything just from seeing the ring.
Yeah, no, and that ring was another part that was another thing I just really liked, that caught me off guard that I wasn't expecting. Because I expected a couple of things to happen in this movie. The ring I did not expect, and it did actually make me very happy because also the story with about that ring is the fact that her husband made her that ring because he couldn't get the family ring from his mom because she didn't think that the woman was good enough. But Michelle Yeoh choosing to give the family ring, the custom made family ring, by the way, from the man that, I mean, I assume she loved him. Yeah, no, I think she loved him. But giving that ring, it you're right. It says everything you need to say about the arc of this character and the conclusion that she came to, and
It
it's
was
great.
it was almost like she was looking at Rachel as that's who I was, that's who I used to be, but I had to
Mhm.
change and it was a difficult life and I saw the toll that it took on me and the family, and it was just funny how and ironic how she treated Rachel exactly the way Nick's grandmother treated her. But then now she was
Yeah,
given the opportunity to make a different choice than her mother-in-law did, and she did.
right. And there's also that whole thing of expectation and blame. Because in that moment when Rachel runs away and then Nick wants to go after her, the grandmother basically says, if you leave, you can't come back. And so, but then Nick doesn't even stop. He just moves. And then then the mother tries to call him back. But in that instance, the grandmother says, this is your
Your
fault.
fault.
And it was, and like in that moment it's like it's such this crazy power play where you have like this younger woman who is di- beneath the mother, but then the mother is still beneath the grandmother. And yeah, like that just that scene and that whole like interaction was just very very interesting to me. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, what did you think about Gemma Chan's character storyline about her and her hiding her wealth and her husband cheating on her because of how she made him feel? Like, how did that story play for you?
I still question it. I don't know why we needed it in the movie. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but I can't quite make the connection for the reason as to why it's there and how it's contributing to the story. I guess maybe
Yeah,
it's just another outcome that could potentially take place because her husband is a commoner like Rachel, and so
mhm.
it could make her life hard in that way. But
Right.
otherwise, like they're different people, so there's just a lot of different ways that things could happen. I guess that just might be an opportunity to show another version of what could
Yeah,
happen.
maybe the whole thing about it is that it exists as a cautionary tale because yeah, like you said, they're both considered to be commoners, and they're both with people that have extreme amounts of wealth. And I think it might have come across more strongly if, because Nick has been hiding his wealth from Rachel, and they never really make that into a big deal like it could be. But the flip side of that is that Astrid has been hiding her wealth or trying to hide her wealth from her husband, and it drives them apart. So the cautionary tale would be you hide who you are, it can contribute to your relationship degrading even further. But that message is not made as poignant as it could because it's never directly brought to Nick to have to contend with so that he can just be like just come out and say, you know what? It was wrong for me to hide all these things. I don't want that for me and you. So we're gonna do something different than what they did.
Same thing goes for Rachel. She never really gets in, like, she knows that he's cheating on Astrid, but she doesn't know the details and the reasons why. None of that is
Mm,
really disclosed to anybody else. But also,
right.
I think the other problem with that subplot is that Astrid literally didn't really do anything wrong.
Yeah,
And
she really didn't.
the way that they play it off is that, like, they try to
It's
put
like both their parts.
yeah, like, it's not like a 50-50 mess up on their relationship. They really put it on the husband in this
Hmm.
movie. They pushed, like, almost all of the blame on him, which is fine cuz just
Hmm.
considering her character and everything. But then it kind of brings us back to the reason to or the question as to why did they do this to Astrid?
Yeah.
Why? Why did you have to have this subplot for her?
Yeah, and I guess like when I first ended the movie, I was thinking, okay, maybe the whole point was for have a message of be confident in who you are, even if you are super wealthy. Don't be ashamed of who you are, no matter what. So I was thinking maybe that was the message they were trying to go for with her subplot. But the whole reason I asked about it was because it also did stand out to me as a little like the strangest aspect to be a part of this story. You know?
Yeah, like, I didn't mind it being there, but also I didn't know why it was there. Like, why did we spend so much time with this subplot? Um, but I mean, I guess, like, another thing is they did have an actual gold digger in the movie, which is the actress.
Yes.
So that's another thing, I guess, another outcome for this whole thing, but that was just
Mm.
a little over the top for me.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, we probably want to start like wrapping it up here soon. But the one last thing that I want to say was that that wedding that was in the movie was absolutely dope, though. I'm like,
40
yo, the
million.
water.
40
I'm
million
like,
dollars.
whew.
That was pretty
And
cool.
you know, and 20 million was their limit, though. Yo, yeah, that wedding was dope. I was just like, okay, this is a reason to get married because this right here, this is how you do it. This is a party. This is like some style. I love the water ramp and mm, 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 mm. Yes, you got style. But what is there anything else that you want to bring up before we closed out? Like, what else is
Yeah.
there that's kind of on your mind?
Um, and I feel like I have to pick between two different things, but I'm gonna remind everyone really quick that this was based on a book, so that might explain why we don't
Mm,
get the plot for Astrid. The other thing that I know, I didn't read the book, but I do know people who have read the book, and I know that it was focused a lot on the food. So I knowing that, I enjoyed that they highlighted a lot of the food in the movie. The other thing that I wanted to bring up were the accents. Accents again.
you and these
They
accents
were
though.
all
You
over
are
the
like
place.
you are on these accents like nothing. They grew up in London. All right, let's hear what you got to
It was just all over the place. We had some British accents, and then we have, like, some Cantonese accents, and we have actual legit Singaporean accents, just all over the place. But
say.
I could
Well,
go into that for a while, so maybe we'll talk a little bit more after this. So
okay. The only thing I will offer is that the children grew up in London, so and I feel like all the children had British accents except for Ronnie Chang. He didn't have a British accent at all. But
Ronnie had Ronnie's accent.
Ronnie had Ronnie's accent. but most of them, at least, the guy who played Nick and Gemma, they had like British accents, and Gemma's actually a British actress, so I mean it makes sense. But
Oh,
um,
one more thing. One more thing. Oh, sorry. Are you done? I got excited.
I'm done. Go do it.
So, I don't know if you saw the after credit scene when Astrid she's like at the party for
Oh yeah.
and then she
Hmm.
sees Harry Shum
Hmm.
Jr. And I was just like, because I was like, why wasn't he in the movie? But then he was at the end, and I was like, oh, Harry Yum.
Oh. Oh Lord. Okay. Is that the ending thought? Is that what you want to end on?
Yeah,
Is that are you good?
Harry
Okay.
Yum.
That's what we thought about the movie. Overall, we enjoyed it. Like, not a perfect movie, but still, very enjoyable for very many things. But what did you guys think about the movie? Did you watch it? What did you think? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. But even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you next time.